What's up, guys? This is YuGiOh KG here, and I'm bringing you guys a different kind of video. This is going to be, I guess, a kind of a helpful tip video, or on your way to being pro or something. I don't know what the heck you can call this. I'm just going to call it a helpful YuGiOh video. And in this video, we're going to talk about missing the timing in YuGiOh, and which is actually frequent, and I actually see quite a bit of people do this. I used to have problems with this back like a while ago, months ago. I used to have problems with this. I could never understand the concept of missing the timing in YuGiOh, but basically missing the timing is when an optional trigger effect has the option to do its effect, but there's a secondary effect that's mandatory that kind of says, no, you can't do your effect. So that's basically what missing the timing is. Basically, it happens when you lose out on a chance to activate an effect with an optional trigger, because the trigger was not the very last thing to happen. And it often happens during a chain, the resolving of a chain, when a trigger meets its condition. That's usually when you miss your timing. So I'm going to go over the three different timing effects or triggers, because there are three different triggers in YuGiOh. There are mandatory triggers, optional triggers that miss their timing, and optional triggers that do not miss their timing. And it's all about wording in YuGiOh. That's just how you gotta play it. But there are, like I said, three different types. There's mandatory triggers, optional triggers that miss timing, and optional triggers that do not miss timing. And like I said, missing timing is when you have an optional effect trigger that goes off, and there's a secondary effect that goes off that's mandatory that kind of says, no, you can't do that. So I'm going to go over the text, like what it will say, and basically what the triggers are, the different triggers, the three of them. So first we'll start with mandatory triggers. Mandatory triggers are when X happens, do this. So basically these cards have to activate at some point when they meet their condition, trigger, whatever. If their trigger is met outside of a chain, you activate it and resolve the card's effect immediately. If that trigger was met during the resolution of a chain, it has to wait until the chain is actually finished. So if it's outside of a chain, you have to do the effect. If it's inside a chain, wait for the chain to resolve, and then you do its effect. And cards that are mandatory, like I said, it's when X happens, do this. It means you have to do it. It'll tell you, it'll say, when this happens, do this. And I have examples right here. And examples of that card is number 39, Utopia. He has a mandatory trigger effect, like right down here. I don't know if you can see this. Alright, it says, well, it's the second line. When this card is targeted for an attack, while it has no XYZ materials, destroy this card. I don't know if you can see that. I'll have to put in the description or something. My light's in the background, I can see it. The reflection. Alright, so when this card is targeted for attack, while it has no XYZ materials, destroy this card. So the keywords are when, blah blah blah, destroy this card. So it's basically saying, like, this guy right here, when he's targeted for attack, no XYZ materials, destroy him. I don't want to hear it. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. He has to be destroyed. You don't have an option here. And this cannot miss. It's mandatory. It has to happen if this requirement is met down here. Sorry for the shadow. So that's the keyword, is when. So when X happens, do this. So in this case, when he has no XYZ materials and is targeted for an attack, destroy him. So he has a mandatory effect. That's what mandatory is. It's basically you have to do it. You don't have an option in this case. Next on the triggers, we have optional triggers that miss timing. That means these triggers can be missed. Like, you can miss their timing if they are not the last thing to happen. So, in other words, it's when X happens, you can do this. So if the last thing that happened during the game was the trigger being met, then you can activate and resolve the effect normally. If the trigger was met, but it was not the very last thing to happen, then you cannot activate and resolve the effect. You miss the timing. So an example of that would be Madolche Magileine, or like most of the Madolche cards. So let me see if I can zoom down here. Her first effect is a mandatory effect. When she's destroyed by your opponent's card effect, either by battle or card effect, and sent to the graveyard, shuffle this card into your deck. That's a mandatory effect. She has to do it. You don't have a choice in that matter. But her secondary effect is an optional trigger effect that can miss timing. When this card is normal or flip summoned, you can add one Madolche monster from your deck to your hand. So the when X happens, you can do this. She has that kind of effect for her secondary effect. So when she's normal summon or flip summon, you can add one Madolche monster from your deck to your hand. So if anything were to happen in between, if anything were to happen after she's summoned, if her summoning is not the last thing to happen, she'll miss her effect to add one Madolche card from the deck to your hand. So she is what we call an optional trigger effect that can miss timing. And our last trigger effect that we have are optional triggers that do not miss timing. That means they're optional, but you don't miss the timing. Basically, if X happens, you can do this. If these cards met their trigger during the resolution of a chain, they can just wait like mandatory effects. You don't have to activate the effect once the window is open to do so. So basically, you can have the condition met for the trigger, but you don't have to activate the effect. You don't have to. It's just there. And if you don't activate it right away, you don't miss the timing for it. An example of this is Cardcar D. Alright. I think it's a second sentence. Second sentence of its effect says, during your main phase 1, if this card was normal summoned this turn, you can tribute this card, draw 2 cards, and becomes the end phase of this turn. So, right there the keywords are if and you can. Because it's not when this card was normal summoned this turn, you can tribute this. Because one, that would make no sense, but during your main phase, if this card was normal summoned this turn, you can tribute this card, draw 2 cards. So, you could normal summon him, activate a whole bunch of spells out the butt, you can do whatever you want, and then when you come around to it, you can tribute him to draw 2 cards. He's basically like a chill guy saying, like, okay, will you summon me? I'm just going to chill here for a little bit while you do some other stuff. So you could, like, normal summon him, set a Mirror Force, Torrential, whatever, then do his effect, draw 2 cards. So he's what we like to call an optional trigger effect that does not miss his timing. I guess that's the clearest way I can explain it. I hope I didn't confuse anybody. I think I should just probably put the effects down in the description box that cover mandatory triggers, optional triggers that miss, and optional triggers that do not miss. I think I could have explained it a little better with Magileine, though, because I think I just confused myself with that. I guess I can go over optional triggers that miss. Basically, if her normal summoning was not the last thing to happen, she can't do her effect to add a Madolche card from the deck to your hand. So, like, let's say, I gotta think of an example. Let's say, alright, let's say player 1 summons Madolche Magileine. Trying to think of a scenario. Player 2 activates MST, targeting their own spell or trap. Alright, so player 1 has no further responses. Player 2 chains Torrential. Player 1 and 2 have no response after that. Now the chain's going to go backwards, and it's going to be Torrential Tribute, then MST. So Torrential Tribute's going to destroy Magileine, and her effect has been met since she was normal summoned. Her effect has been met, but it cannot act on it because something else still has to happen, the resolution of MST. And since she is a when you can effect, she lacks her trigger to go do her effect after the chain resolves, so she misses the timing. But that's basically how it is. And then MST resolves next, destroying Torrential Tribute or whatever the spell trap was, then the chain is done. But she's gone from Torrential, she can't get her effect because she missed the timing. There was something to happen afterwards. So, yeah, I hope that was a good recap of that. But yeah, if she's not the last, if her normal summoning is not the last thing to happen, she can't get her effect out of Madolche from the deck to the hand. I hope that can clear it up. As for these, move my light. As for this, mandatory, optional that can miss, optional that cannot miss. Geez, I really hope this video did not confuse anybody, because I think it probably did, but if there are any questions, I can probably try to answer them as best as I can in the description. Like I said, I hope this video did not confuse anybody. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys later.